Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to our regular scheduled city council meeting. We have a couple of, well, first of all, I'd like to excuse the mayor. He is unable to attend tonight, so I'm Councilmember Saunders. I'll be acting as Mayor Pro Tem, and we have Councilmember Call and Swap with us, and Morse and Dixon joining us via Zoom. So we'll call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with our flag ceremony, which I will conduct, and then we'll have a prayer moment of silence by Councilmember Morse. If you would, please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather this evening and serve the people of our community. We thank you, Lord, for the many blessings that you have given us and for this beautiful city that we call home. Lord, we ask that you bless the members of this council, our city staff, and all who are here tonight. We ask that you grant us wisdom as we make decisions. Help us to listen with respect and seek understanding and to work together for the good of the city. Father, we also ask that you please watch over our residents and first responders and all those who so bravely serve our community. Lord, we are grateful for their love and guidance, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Morse. We'll move to item 3, public presentation. Residents attending this meeting will be allotted 3 minutes to express a concern or ask a question about any issue that is not on the agenda. As a reminder, no action can or will be taken on any issue presented. And if you do come forward, please state your name and address. Is there anyone that would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll move to our next item, upcoming events. There is a senior lunch bunch at the barn, July 22nd at 11:30 a.m. And then we have the Music Circle at the barn, July 27th at 7 p.m. And also a drawing workshop at the barn. That'll be August 10th at 6 p.m. Do you have any more information on that, Councilmember Cole?
Reggie Peterson is teaching that class. It's still open, obviously, for registration for a while. I would add one item is the Art Council also sponsors an open sew night, which is on July 21st from 5 to 8:30 at the barn. It's an opportunity for anybody that would like to come learn how to sew or quilt, to come receive some instruction, or those that have their machine and want to work on a project while they're there with other people to socialize with. So it's not a registration required, but there's information online you can find too if you need to reach out to those that coordinate it.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sounds like a lot of those workshops over there at the barn have been pretty successful, so that's cool. We'll move to item number 5, council updates. Are there any updates from council? Seeing none, we will move to action item number 6 on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or questions from the council on the consent agenda? If there is none, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda items A and B.
Second. Do it this time. Oh, that's great. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. I guess I got to do a roll call on that one. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Swap.
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you. Motion carries. We'll move, look for a motion to move to the public hearing for the purpose of soliciting public input on adoption and ordinance authorizing the adoption of a franchise agreement between West Haven City and Rocky Mountain Power.
Do you want to speak to it
yes.
before we do that?
Yeah, I was, yes, I'm happy to. And we have a representative from Rocky Mountain Power, Kurt. He's been the individual that we've been coordinating with, but
Do we need a motion to move into the public hearing?
Will, I think he was just gonna.
Oh, okay, you're just
Yeah.
prefacing it. Thank you.
so I would just say that the franchise agreement, and we've had one for some time, and it has lapsed. And so this process has ensued, and we're to a point where we think we've agreed on the terms. I appreciate Kurt. He's been great to work with. And even ahead of that, in the field, when we encountered a pole that needed to be moved, he was great to work with Rocky Mountain Power crew to make sure that that was adjusted. And so so I'm not sure that there's a lot more to tell you about it at this point, other than conducting the public hearing, because it is adoption by an ordinance. And if you have questions, then that we can proceed from there. And one other item of clarification. So this franchise agreement essentially governs how Rocky Mountain Power operates their facilities within our right of way, and that's really the point of what's trying to be described and defined in this agreement.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Do we have a motion to move into the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to move into the public hearing in a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we are now in the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to move out of public hearing.
So moved.
I moved.
Oh.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move to item 8. Action on ordinance 15-2026, authorizing the adoption of the franchise agreement between West Haven and Rocky Mountain Power. Is there any discussion from the council on this?
I just noticed on section 9.1, it says Rocky Mountain and then has power in red crossed out. And maybe that was supposed to be left there to say Rocky Mountain Power. Otherwise, no issues. So then I would make a motion to approve ordinance 15-2026, authorizing the adoption of a franchise agreement between West Haven City and Rocky Mountain Power, just updating 9.1 to include the word power in Rocky Mountain Power.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call. Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Councilmember Swap.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Saunders, I think you're supposed to vote as well.
Okay. Well, oh, yes, I vote yes. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were saying there. Thanks, Councilmember Morse, keeping me straight.
It's dramatic.
Keeping it straight even when I'm
I'm
virtual.
a yes, I am an aye, sorry. So motion carries. We will move to action. Let's see, we'll move to item 10. And we're actually not moving to item 10, sorry. We're going to move that down to 12. We'll move to item 11. Action on resolution
item 9.
29. Sorry.
Let's do number 9 first.
Oh, okay. Action on resolution 27, 2026, authorizing the adoption of a license agreement between Hooper Irrigation Company and the city for installation of a box culverts on the Hooper Canal on 1800 South and the proposed 1800 South to 2100 South Connector Road. Edward Mignon.
Thank you. What we have tonight before you is a license agreement that you probably have seen in the past for other road projects, essentially for the widening of 1800 over the Hooper Canal, and for the prospective connector road, we have to increase the size of the culverts, thus requiring a license agreement with Hooper Irrigation. And hopefully it's just more for formality once we get them the full application, once we approve it here.
Okay, is there any further discussions on that?
So we won't be moving towards sidewalk or anything in just replacing the culvert, right? We'll have to
Well,
wait till,
the 1800 side will be the full improvements.
right?
Yeah.
But when we're just doing this at the moment, correct? The culvert.
Yes, we're intending on doing that one section, or in the short term, while we get to a point where we can widen the rest of 1800 going to 19 for the signal and going from further to the west based on the connector road.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just a point of clarification with that. The city did budget the installation of the culvert on 18th South, and I think sidewalk improvements for a block or so that was missing curb gutter and sidewalk.
Correct.
And so, but this is obviously this agenda item's just for the culvert portion, but I think there's money in the budget to try to create some connectivity with sidewalks. Is that how you
That's correct.
understand it? Okay.
And so we think that once we've done this, we don't have to change it again later on when things are actually
Where
widened.
it's being designed for long term.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was the only question I had, was to make sure that
Sure.
we're not doing something that we have to change later, so. Any other questions from council? All right. Look for a motion on item 9.
I move to adopt resolution 27-2026, authorizing the adoption of the license agreement between Hooper Irrigation Company and the city for the installation of box culverts on the Hooper Canal on 1800 South and the proposed 1800 South to 2100 South Connector Road.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
It's an echo.
We'll do a roll call. Councilmember Swap,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon, Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon, Councilmember Call.
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an I too. I am confused between mute and unmute, so I'm an I.
I was getting back to you. Councilmember Dixon's an aye, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Now we will move to item 11. Action on resolution 29, 2026, the award bid for West Haven City chip seal project. Do we have any further information on that?
It'd be me again, Mayor. So this is the time of the year where we normally do our road maintenance projects, and at the same time last year, we approved a similar contract for chip sealing for certain roads. So before you tonight, we did receive bids on July 8th, and we had 3 bids come in. The lowest bid was by Consolidated Paving and Concrete with a bid amount of $98,659.44. And with the staff report, I did attach the maps of the locations that are going to be treated. If anyone has any other questions about that.
Does anyone have questions for Ed? Okay, seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 29-2026 to award the bid for the 2026-2027 chip seal project, consolidated paving concrete in the amount of $98,659.44.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Swap,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion passes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Are we ready to move to 12? Okay, we'll move to item 12. This is a presentation and discussion for any, we're moving to item 10. Action on Planning Commission meeting recommendations, Resolution 28-2026, Economic Development and Strategic Plan, Stephen Nelson, Community Development.
So our consultant wasn't able to be here right at 6. He may show up during this presentation. But anyway, so I will, I'll take it. I'll give us an introduction and kind of walk through the presentation that he had prepared. So what we're looking at today is the updated version or the recommended version of the Economic Development Strategic Master Plan, or strategic plan, not master plan. This plan's goal is this plan was the council budgeted money for the city to conduct this plan in order to really study and review economic development potential within the city. We've had a few meetings on this in the past. We did a workshop with the council a few months ago where there's a basic rundown of where the plan was headed. And we've worked with the Planning Commission over the course of really just over the past month, about 3 different or probably 4 different meetings with the Planning Commission, reviewing the items within the plan, and there's some modifications made. And so to jump into it, we'll go through the different slides that will be up on the screen. So the first part is like, why do we want to do an economic strategic plan? What's the purpose of this? What are we hoping to gain out of this document? And I think there are a few reasons. And as listed here, our first item that we really were set out to do is try to create a vision of what our economic development potential was, and what the future of the economic development would be in the city. And then looking at the vision, we took several other steps to see how our vision should be modified, or what parts of our vision were supported with the data. And so we did several stakeholder meetings where we talked to residents, business owners and leaders, and the community developers and local officials. Our consultant reviewed economic data for West Haven and the surrounding area. They reviewed our resources, what was available. And then looking at those, they used their expertise and knowledge to come up with policies that would help achieve certain goals, like supporting local business, help improve our financial sustainability, and then also provide recommendations for land use and building resiliency within the city. And so now so the plan has been created at this point, and that's what's in front of you. So if you want to go to the next slide. So there's some parts of if you look at the actual breakdown of the plan, there's several different chapters within it. And what we'll talk about in this presentation is some of the chapters that provide a little bit more meat as part of the plan. And so one of the first items is the potential economic development areas that were identified. You can see the map that's in front of you, that highlights the key areas. So the first one is 21st Interchange in 1900 West, 2550 South, Midland and Hinckley, Midland and 4000 South, and then the Western Weber Corridor. So if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. So let's start with 21st Street. So this is one area, and we talked a little bit about some of these at our general plan workshop at the last meeting. Um, so this is an area that was identified because we believe it has a lot of economic potential, partly due to its location off the 21st Street or off the 21st interchange. And there's also already some commercial and residential base that would support additional development there, and would lead to additional economic potential. There are a few issues. One item that you'll see on this map is you'll see there is a hashed area on the northeast corner in the yellow. So essentially what that is identifying is that there are potential there's potential barriers for additional development. Some of those are utilities, some of those are access. There's only one roadway in and out of most of that area. There's also some brownfield development. So there was old industrial that's been since demolished, or an old dump that now if anybody were to develop some of those sites, they'd have to go in and clean the site first in order to meet environmental standards. There's also a lot of floodplain in that area. So even though there is some economic potential in a lot of these areas, there's also some substantial barriers. And so looking at this, one thing that we would likely do is, as we're reviewing the economic potential of this, it may lead to further either additional studies or review of what infrastructure is actually needed and how to make the site actually feasible. Okay, if you want to head to the next slide. So the next one is 1900 West. And so the map on the side looks very similar. So when we first were looking at this whole area, the 1900 West and 21st Street, it was initially, we kind of grouped it as one economic development zone, but it's quite large. And after further review, we felt like there were different possibilities and needs with each section. Because you have around the 21st Street, which has a little bit higher traffic count. You have a little bit more housing in that area, and it leads itself to potentially a little bit different type of economic development, where 1900 has historically kind of been our industrial core. And if you look at the current uses in there, you kind of have a smattering of commercial uses and industrial uses. So we felt like it would be important to kind of separate these into two different zones. And you'll see that, like in the 21st Street, for instance, larger retail and hotels felt like they were a higher possibility. That we actually already have some hotels out in that area already. But along 1900, you're seeing a lot more of like these type of flex space units or commercial that has risen up to support those. Like you see Maverick or fast food restaurants, so those type of things that would support those type of industrial type of uses. And so essentially there is a lot of development potential in this area as well. But, based off the review, it looks like the most potential users are industrial and flex industrial, neighborhood, commercial neighborhood office, and some higher density housing could possibly be an option in this area. If you want to go down to 2550, so this area was probably the most controversial in our discussions, not only as a staff and with the stakeholders, but also when we brought it forward to the Planning Commission and in the public hearing. This is pretty much every comment we received was regarding this area. And so the Planning Commission took those comments very seriously. So on May 27th, we held a public hearing, the required public hearing for the plan, and at which we heard several comments that came in and raised concerns about what this economic development in this area would look like. There was a little bit of confusion with what this plan represented. For instance, we had several people who commented like, if you adopt this plan, you can't bulldoze my home for a business to come in. And that's not the goal of the plan. The plan is to help identify areas of potential, but not necessarily where we would, force business to be developed. And I think explaining some of those helped a little bit. But the Planning Commission so they continued the item on there and asked us to kind of review these concerns for this area. And so then on June 10th, we prepared staff prepared a couple maps, just like potential development options. And the Planning Commission generally felt like additional mapping would be appropriate in this area. If you actually want to scroll to the next slide. Yeah, so this was the map that was presented to the Planning Commission. Well, this is a slightly altered map that was presented to the Planning Commission. And when they heard, so we provided a map that showed kind of the basic land uses where you'd have neighborhood commercial located along the frontages of 2550, and then residential that kind of surrounded those uses. If you see the utility and open space in green, that represents the Water District's property, Jordan Valley Water District, which they have planned to build a storage and treatment facility there. And they essentially would have stated to us that they want to keep that. However, they are looking at surplusing about 20 acres on the 2550, 2700 west intersection that's highlighted in red on this map. So after we presented this to the Planning Commission felt like this deserves some additional feedback from residents and asked us to schedule another public hearing, which we did, and which was held at their last meeting in June, which was June 24th. At that meeting, we also received several comments from surrounding property owners and residents, and there were still a few concerns that were raised generally about the change of the nature of this neighborhood and agricultural area. But we also heard there were several residents who came who had concerns during the first public hearing, who then voiced more support for this planning process. And there were additional residents who hadn't voiced concerns or hadn't voiced previous opinions who came and voiced support for the map. So the Planning Commission wanted to adopt, or felt like in this area, it was important to include a more helpful map to help kind of guide what that potential development would look like. And that seemed to be supported by the residents who provided feedback, essentially allowing some like visioning and more details was helpful, I think, in this process. And so one of the other things that they wanted to make clear was that they wanted this to be neighborhood commercial. So no industrial, no flex space, no, not even high intensity C2 type commercial, other than potentially a grocery store in this area. And so that's one reason why we don't just have this listed as commercial. We have it listed as neighborhood commercial, which reflects our C1 zoning, which was our least intensive commercial use. Before I get,
Stephen,
yeah,
on neighborhood commercial, is a grocery store allowed in that zone?
no, it's not.
So how would we approach that if we did have a grocery store that wanted
Yeah.
to?
So we're currently in discussions with the Water District about how they could surplus this property. And we are currently working on based on our discussions with them, we've decided maybe one of the best ways to handle that development is potentially through some sort of development agreement where we tie out the different uses that would be allowed on that corner. And our current working draft essentially states that everything within C1 would be allowed. However, it'd be required that a grocery store and the supporting potential uses of a grocery store would also be allowed. And so I haven't received their feedback on that yet, but that reflects our general conversations of how that corner would be developed.
Okay, so we could allow it even though currently it's not allowed in our
Yeah,
C1 zone.
Yeah, we do it through this. One of their concerns that they raised with us is they didn't want to necessarily just surplus it and then have somebody come in and develop something that wasn't within the city's vision. So they wanted to find a way that they could surplus the property and follow their own processes to ensure they got the highest and best value for those they represent, but also have it be a benefit to the city so that the city would get what we wanted. In that visioning process or in that development process.
Would they have to go through like what's the word I'm looking for? Like some type of exception since
Conditional use?
Yeah, there we go.
So what I our current draft, and once again, we're still working through, has that it lists that area use in a C1 would be allowed. And then in addition to that, a grocery store would be allowed as a conditional use.
Okay.
And so we would have a little bit enhanced process, but the agreement as it's currently written would require that the anchor location of that development area would be a grocery store.
Okay, thank you.
And hopefully the council, once we get through the red lines back and forth between the district and staff, that would have to be approved through the same process as like a rezone, like we'd have to do a public hearing with the planning commission where they'd make a recommendation on it, and then it would come to, and we'd have to provide notices to the surrounding property owners. And then that would come to council for final approval. Rob, yeah, I guess, yeah. So this is Rob Sant. He's our consultant on this. I guess, did you want to take it or?
You're doing great.
Okay, I guess he's here if we have any other questions too. If you want to go to the next section. Oh, we're there. So one of the next areas of importance we found was kind of the Midland and Hinckley area. That's kind of, I don't know what color that is, green, turquoise. That we found that area is, the Hinckley intersection is already in Midland. That's one of our higher trafficked areas. We also have a bunch of supporting residential. That's where some of our higher density developments are located. Within that property, we also, on the edges of it, there's already some older industrial type developments that potentially, I would say they're probably ripe for redevelopment in the near future. And so the idea is that however, there is some limitations in there. There's not a lot of huge parcels. And also, if you look at the development that's happening further south, where we're going to have some big retail come in, that potentially put some limitations on what would come in here. However, that being said, so some of the uses that we felt would be appropriate would potentially be some flex industrial, particularly along the edge of our industrial development that's further north, neighborhood commercial, neighborhood office, and then higher density housing could continue to be there. Then the next one, this is Midland and 4000 South. So this is really going to be our regional commercial center. So this is where Walmart is currently being constructed. And we've been in conversations with several of the property owners, not only the property owner right around Walmart, but also up and down 4000, that there's a desire to do more regional and neighborhood commercial and retail in this area. That's likely what will continue to be developed. And so that's how it's currently listed. There is some big property that's currently undeveloped and vacant areas. As you can see, pretty much everything around Walmart is currently undeveloped. And then we also still have some parcels along 4000 South that are currently zoned as commercial use. Some is C3, some is C2. And I've actually had conversations with property owners that are ready, that are wanting to develop, but they've kind of been waiting for the anchor location of Walmart to take place, and then they're planning to move forward with their projects. And then the last one that we have here is if you want to move to the next slide, is the Western Weber Corridor area. So this is really 4000 up on the west side of the city. So as we know, the SR 177 is planning to kind of come up around 5100, and that will cause some additional traffic and potentially some additional commercial demand. So one of the biggest limitations with this area is there's not a lot of undeveloped property. There are a few parcels that have single homes on them on really large lots that are right next to Lake West Academy, 4700 West, that intersection. We have a Maverick, and Intermountain Health owns the other corner, kitty corner from Maverick. And then we have a couple vacant parcels or underdeveloped parcels that are adjacent to that too, that will likely have some commercial development. And then as you continue north up to 47, there is some vacancy. We actually have a site plan in for commercial development up there right now, 4700 West. But there's a lot of some heavier commercial or light industrial type of uses like landscape companies and stuff in that area too. And so that's why, because of some limited space and development potential, that's why neighborhood commercial is probably one of the first recommendations. So small retail, those type of things, neighborhood office, and then even potential flex space in those areas where we're already seeing some of that demand. So before I continue on to the next section, is there any comments or questions about any of these areas? All right, if you have anything.
So just one thing I would add here on this one too is there's potential in the unincorporated sections that's not part of West Haven yet, where I was at a meeting, and I'm not saying that Costco is going to come to West Haven, but I was at a meeting with Costco's real estate person a few weeks ago, and they talked about the Syracuse location. And they said the only reason we'd even considered Syracuse is because of that West Davis corridor. So that's why we wanted to include this Western Weber corridor, is that new corridor that's going to come through, and the traffic counts and the visibility really opens up this section of the city that right now, you do have to drive quite a bit to get down there. So there's potential here, but right now that big limitation is just there's not a lot of available land that's currently in West Haven. But as you get up and go more into where it's unincorporated Weber County, then there is that opportunity that could be in the future that have a lot of sales tax and other opportunities for the city.
So to that point on 4,700, did we consider looking at 4,000 all the way up to the Walmart area on both sides to be commercial just on the frontage? I mean, you look at Clinton City and that's what they did all the way through, what do they call it over there, 2000 or 2000 West? I mean, that was their long-term planning right there, and that's all slowly developing into businesses where, older homes used to be. How come we didn't consider that here?
I can maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, you
too.
go ahead and speak.
So I think part of it was when we identified some of these areas, we wanted to look at, because this doesn't necessarily preclude any of those from developing as commercial, but these were areas of highest potential for economic development. So right at the edges of those, so where 4,000 meets Midland, and then potentially where 4,000 meets the road. I do think eventually there'd probably be some commercial development up in between. But the reason, and like another big commercial area that wasn't included was our industrial area along 1900. Partly because a lot of that's already developed and we kind of already have the vision for what that could be. And so that was one of the reasons why it wasn't included all the way up and down, was just we felt that the edges were the most viable at this moment. I don't know, do you have any?
Yep. And then I'd also just add the very first slide that was in the presentation, right? The whole goal of the strategic plan is to kind of try to narrow focus as much as possible. And so with some of these, especially we saw this in the 21st interchange in 1900, we could have just kept on going out and expanding, right? But we want to try to focus and say, okay, looking at potential opportunities, what's going to have the biggest bang for the resources that we have. And so I definitely agree with Stephen that I think all of 4,000 South eventually will redevelop, but this is kind of going to be the catalyst that if the city focuses on that now, I think a lot of that other redevelopment of commercial will just be naturally occurring.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions on the identified areas? You want me to take over on the goals? Yeah, do you want, okay. Awesome. If you want to go to the next one. So with this, I think something to kind of talk about too is the actual strategic plan's over 60 pages, right? But all of it kind of narrows down to identifying the areas that Stephen just talked about, and then some overarching goals that then we could focus on as the city to really increase the cost of, or increase the quality of life, the tax base, and other things for the city and its residents. And so we identified a couple of overarching goals, and then those goals have key strategies that the city can focus on with given its resources and different things. There's primary sub-goals and secondary sub-goals. And so the first one that we had is strengthen and diversify the local economy. And then what that really means is to build a more resilient economy by expanding commercial, retail, employer, entrepreneurship, and redevelopment opportunities. And some of those were spurred by West Haven is growing, right? you've had a 9% average annual population growth over the last 10 years. And you're one of the definitely the top growing cities in northern Utah and one of the top growing in all of Utah. Southern Utah has a lot of expansion, but in northern Utah, West Haven's one of the ones that 9% is a big number. And we project that it won't continue at 9%, right? Eventually, you'll run out of room, but it's still showing that there'll be a lot of growth going into the future as well. There's also a high median income in West Haven compared to a lot of the surrounding communities. And so that's something else that retailers look at as a benefit, and a place that they would want to locate is there is income that can be spent on retail uses. And then the other one, and this is, there's been an average of 9 commercial permits that have been issued every year. And so there is opportunity to increase that. So some of the key strategies that are identified in the plan, the first one is to expand commercial and retail opportunities, recruit anchors, and fill leakage categories. So we did a retail leakage study, which we presented in our work session a few months ago, that identified some of the key categories that the city can focus on. One of those is the general commercial. So Walmart's going to fill that need, but continue to look for opportunities to recruit those major anchors. And then, as I mentioned before, you'll see the other commercial naturally that will just come to be next to those key anchors. Another one would be to attract and retain employers, designate transportation served employment priorities. So that would be kind of your 1900, your 21st interchange. There's a lot of great existing sectors in the city, so continue to focus on those sectors. This is one that it's a launch a business retention and expansion program. Again, resources are limited, time's limited. And so with this one, there's some easy things that you can do for that business retention and expansion. You could do an annual survey. You could have a Facebook page, a social media page where you highlight your existing businesses, but something that just shows to your existing businesses that we're here, we support you. And then the other thing too is there's a lot of existing stakeholders in the area. So you have an SBDC, a Small Business Development Center at Weber State, and their whole goal is to help entrepreneurs, to help small businesses grow. And so instead of focusing the time and the money on that, use your partners that exist, use the Chamber of Commerce, those existing stakeholders that have the time and have the expertise, where maybe it's just promoting an existing program to help support those businesses. And then one of the last ones that we highlighted here is redevelop underutilized industrial commercial sites in the 21st Interchange and 1900 West areas. We have that sector that exists there, but now a lot of it is older. So let's kind of reinvest and improve those underutilized industrial commercial areas. Stephen probably mentioned that you have the part of the 21st Interchange that's constrained, right? So maybe it's you work with a lobbyist and they help track and get money at the state that you could then invest in this area. That could be something that you could do as a city council that would really promote that underutilized area on the 21st Interchange. And then the data and rationale that we used outside of what I highlighted in those green boxes is you have that rapid residential growth, which is creating that demand for retail and other of those services. You have great I-15 access. You have a great existing industrial users, and then there are those vacant and underutilized parcels. And then the other thing too that I just highlighted here is 99% of all the businesses in Utah are small businesses, and they're really the backbone of any city. And so you don't need to necessarily go out and recruit a 500, 600 employer, right? Just small businesses is a great way to also improve that tax base and the quality of life. And then the other one to highlight why it's good to create those jobs is currently, as a bedroom community, this is normal, but around 8,500 of your residents commute out of West Haven for their job. So creating those opportunities closer to home is just something that you could do to increase the quality of life for your residents. If you want to go to the next one. So the second one is to improve the fiscal sustainability and diversify municipal revenues. And so there's a lot of things that we could do with this one. Things that we highlighted for this, 96% of your general fund revenues are generated by sales tax. And then the other thing is we did a cost of service study that kind of shows the type of land use and the revenues it brings in compared to how much you have to invest as a city. And so for every dollar of revenue, there's $1.16 for residential. For West Haven, that's a lot higher, right? Because you don't get a property tax. So for you, you do get some sales tax from online sales from those houses, but they by far are the highest cost of a city compared to industrial and commercial. That's another reason why you'd want to diversify your revenues. And then 67% is the current capture rate that you have in sales tax. So 33% of sales are leaking and not in West Haven. So focusing on increasing those opportunities to increase your capture in sales tax. So some of the key strategies for that one, prioritize commercial and mixed use zoning in commercial centers, corridors, and high visibility locations. So in those key economic development areas we identified, protect sales tax generating areas by limiting uses that do not support sales tax productivity. Use fiscal modeling and fiscal impact studies for major land use decisions and annexations. So when you're going to make a major annexation or consider a rezone, what's going to be that fiscal impact? What's the benefit to West Haven? And then the other one we identified is pursue grants, intergovernmental funding, CRA as community reinvestment areas, tools. And then also we did identify that it would be wise to conduct a property tax feasibility analysis. So not issue a property tax, but take a step to see, hey, what's the feasibility of us doing that? That's something else that was identified in the plan. And then we already went through that rationale. So if you go to the next slide. So for this one, manage growth proactively. So we already highlighted that there's a lot of growth occurring in West Haven. And so we want to use this goal to shape where and how growth occurs so new development supports the long-term vision and the fiscal health of the city. So key strategies for this one, update the annexation plan to reserve key corridors for commercial and employment uses. And you'll notice too, a lot of these goals are kind of tied together, right? So that's something else we identified is preserving those key corridors for commercial sales tax employers. Require fiscal neutrality and fiscal impact analysis before an annexation approval. Create an infrastructure readiness map for utilities, roads, and service capacity. So that's something that will be really important in that 1900 and 21st interchange areas. Encourage missing middle and mixed use housing in strategic areas connected to commercial centers. So that's not saying, hey, you need to allow duplexes and triplexes and things throughout the city, but in those key strategic areas where it would make sense, allow those types of missing middle homes. And then coordinate transportation, infrastructure, growth boundaries, and transit with regional partners. So work with WFRC, work with the county, work with your neighboring cities to coordinate those transportation and infrastructure and needs that way. And that's also a good way to pursue those grants, right? It makes you it's more cost effective. You don't have to put as much money towards it if it's a matching grant. And then it's a little more appealing for those that are giving out the grants. If maybe it's you and it's Roy or you and Ogden or those different neighboring communities that are going together to get those grants. You want to go to the next slide? So modernize planning and development processes. So again, this one, which is a shout out to Stephen and staff and council, a lot of these have already been worked on, or even some have been achieved. So that's great news. But for this one, create a predictable, efficient, and transparent process that supports quality development and competitiveness. So some of the key strategies that we identified for this one, audit and revise land use and development code to reduce redundancies and clarify expectations. Create a step-by-step development guide and conduct developer roundtables and surveys. So again, that's just a great way to say, hey, how are we doing? Compare impact fees to regional peers and report annual revenues and expenditures. That's something that came out as we were meeting with some of the developers in our roundtable, as the impact fees in West Haven are a little higher than neighboring communities. Again, that's because there's more infrastructure needs, but it's something to look at is look at other regional peers and what their impact fees are. And then also have a report that says, hey, these are the revenues we received and these are what our expenses are for our impact fees. And then prioritize infrastructure investment in key development areas and create a long-term investment plan. So again, that's part of that narrowing. So we've identified these key development areas. So now as we get investment, we get grants, we get funding, we'll prioritize it into these key development areas. And then the last one is we said strengthen staff capacity and interdepartmental development coordination. And then goal 5, enhance community identity and quality of life. So that's something that came up in a lot of our discussions and in our surveys is West Haven is an amazing place to live, but it lacks a brand, it lacks an identity. So what is West Haven? So for this one, we said, let's use branding, placemaking, public spaces, trails, and gateway design to build a clear sense of place as West Haven continues to grow. So for this one, some of the ones that we talked about, develop a Welcome to West Haven brand package and integrate that into signage, gateways, and communications. So another city that I work with, they have a packet that they give out as they get a new business that comes in. That's like, hey, welcome to Sandy, or they have one also for residents. And so that's an example of an idea that could work with that one. Another one is that they identified is there's not really a town center. Where's the town center of West Haven? So we talked about maybe that's 2550 South, but prioritize a walkable town center that has gathering spaces for civic events and for community interaction, right? That's something. I was at another meeting today and they were talking about there's a library in West Capitol in Salt Lake City, and that area was dilapidated and lacked a lot of investment. And they identified, hey, if we build a library, a public gathering space, that's really going to bring the people outside and help revitalize this area. And it's something that's happening. Now you see a lot of development happening around that. So it's the same thing with that town center. A central gathering community space really increases the quality of life. And it's something that people look for when they want to find a new place to live and also a new place to do business. Expand your trails and active transportation connections to retail nodes, schools, and public spaces. Establish gateway corridor design guidelines and targeted beautification areas. And then the last one is plan for community programming space, wayfinding, events, art, and recreation partnerships. And those are the goals. Any questions on those?
Yeah. Maybe one thing just to clarify, if you look at the strategies that are in there, there's like, I don't know, 70 of them or something. And so one thing we wanted to be sure to clarify within the plan itself is that the expectation is not necessarily that we would do all 70 steps or all 70 items, but that these strategies kind of serve as a toolbox for the city. So when we know we're addressing a certain issue, like let's say we wanted to enhance community, like it's up here. We can look at the tools or the strategies under that goal and kind of, as the city, to kind of pick and choose which ones we feel like are going to be the most efficient, what ones we'll have the highest degree of success with. And so within the plan itself, it tries to identify that we're not necessarily obligating the city to achieve each of the items listed, but that we can utilize any of those items to help achieve our economic development goals.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it's the 5 goals are what you're looking to achieve, right? So the successful plan, once this is implemented and rolled out, is are we achieving these 5 goals? And then we've just identified here's a lot of different things that you could do as a city to achieve those. You decide, given your staff level, your funding, what ones are going to better achieve those goals. So yeah, and then there's also a matrix that we did too that does have the 70 different strategies, and then that's something that Stephen and staff can use and update as they go on and as they identify what strategies they want to focus on.
Any questions?
So this really maybe for the public, but this isn't like a binding document, right? These are opportunities, ideas, goals, but the maps and the things that are here are not binding,
Correct.
right? We can deviate from that if we see so fit. And maybe the public doesn't understand that, but just want to note that.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's very similar to our general plan or other planning documents that serves as guidings, help us set policies, help us make decisions in the future, but we don't necessarily have to do what the plan says.
Right. Because me personally, I don't feel like, look at all the leakage. Well, I don't think we need all of that in our city, right? We can go somewhere else to purchase those items or visit those businesses. So I don't think we need to have every single type of business in our city, right? But the opportunity might be there to see some of those. So I just want to let sure everybody
Yep.
knows that.
Yep.
I love 95% of this. I think this is great. You guys did a lot of good work. For me, the 2550 development area, I think doesn't belong in our city at all. And me, for one, if we go to pass this, I would ask that we consider removing that whole section from this plan. I think exercising our main corridors, our state roads and county roads, 4,000, Midland, 4,700, that's where we need to focus on economic development, not in the center of our city. I mean, we just talked about that the higher medium income our city is, right? And people are traveling outside of the city for work. They chose this place for that reason, right? And so trying to cater for other people to have somewhere closer to work that's for a lower income, that's not what West Haven was. That's not what people moved here for. So for me, 2550, I think is a horrible idea. That's the 5% that I just don't agree with. The rest of it, I think, is fantastic. There's great goals in here, and I think this is exactly what the city needed. So good work.
And I would probably differ with that a little bit. Just in the 2550 area, I think some areas you do need, you need a larger space for different types of business.
And
Whereas if we
do.
just develop along 4,000 South, you're kind of limited to the front of that. And so, and there's a lot of residential areas that border 4,000 South. So I don't necessarily agree with piling everything into the same area, because it also tends to increase the traffic all in one area. And so I think sometimes it is good to spread these areas out. And 2550, the reason it would be attractive to like a grocery store is it has the actual space for it. Whereas, for example, areas along 4,000 South would be pretty limited and very expensive to develop with existing homes that are already in those areas. So, I mean, also, I love the idea of focusing on 21st Street. I think there's some really good opportunities for redevelopment in that area. So I agree with a lot of what's in here and like the direction we're heading. So just wanted to make that comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, nothing to add. I want to thank Stephen. I want to thank the steering committee. Councilmember Call was on that. Mayor was on that. So it was a lot of investment from them, and without them, I don't think we would have ended up with the document that we have. And also thanks to those that participated in our roundtables and things. That was a really important part that helped us draft this document.
You talked about a little bit about unincorporated areas on 4,700 South. I wonder if there was any discussion on areas along 3,500 that are also unincorporated. We have a large landowner in that area, and there might be some potential in that area, I would think, sort of being in the heart of the city, but not under the control of the city.
Mhm. So for identifying the key strategic areas, we focused on just what was currently in the city, but then in one of the goals, we have identified, hey, work on an annexation plan and identify those key areas to focus on for future annexation opportunities. So we did kind of address that in the goals part of the strategic plan, but not in the economic development strategic areas.
And I would say, as part of our general plan process, that's one thing we're looking at is kind of the peripheries of the city, like 35 particularly, and what areas out there are maybe have higher possibility of commercial development. We already have some commercial development along 35, and the county has zoned some areas also for commercial. And so those are things we'll be looking at with our general plan to help give us guidance as annexations come in about what to zone them as they come in. And then maybe I can speak to the 2550, because I understand the concern. I think one of the reasons that we looked at this area and why it was identified, partly to do, so we've already seen some commercial demand for this area that there is active. There's been several grocers who've looked at this area as potential development, independent even from the conversations with the water district. I've had grocers come in and talk to me about this corner. We've also had a few of the property owners who currently are either have ag land or maybe property that isn't fully developed, and have expressed and have seen potential for commercial development along the 2550. Particularly, it is well, we don't know for sure what will happen with the future Western Weaver corridor or where those interchanges are going to be, but there's a possibility that one would come on 2550 South, and therefore creating, 2550 South could look like 4,000 in the future. Maybe not quite to the same size, but
It probably will be, because you have a grand interchange on I-15 right there that's going to be put in. So
Yep.
it will be a 5-lane someday.
yeah. And so that's when we're looking at it. That's one reason why we felt like if we can identify this potentially now could be, there could be commercial demand on this, not only currently, but in the future. And so it was worth exploring how does this develop, whether or not we wanted to identify this area as commercial for that exact reason, because in the future, that demand might be there. And so we wanted to make sure that we considered it as an opportunity, or what are we calling these, opportunity areas for that type of development.
Stephen, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How have we done any sort of inventory of the city of how many areas we have that are actually large enough to build a grocery store?
No, that's a good question. So typically a grocery store, depending on its size, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 20 acres for development. So we haven't specifically looked at sizes of property for that specific use, but I do know as part of this process, when we are identifying areas of potential economic development, the amount of underdeveloped property or vacant property did weigh into some of those decisions for where an item could fit. Like, for example, when we're looking at the Western 4000 South section, even though that could potentially be a lot of traffic and there could be that demand, there's just not the space to put a use of that size.
To follow up on that question, what are the size of the grocery stores? What's the acreage that they're looking for on the ones that have approached you already?
So the ones that I've talked to have been looking at anywhere between 5 to 10 acres for use. I mean, some of your bigger retailers like Walmart's are going to use a lot more, but I think, like, if I'm remembering right, Kent's and Roy, and that commercial pad development sits on about 5 acres total. Why Weiniger's is about 3 acres. And so kind of give you a little bit of reference and perspective for what those developments and the different acreage, what you can actually put on it. Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think definitely 3 to 10 probably for a grocer. But I think what's important to them too is how that 3 to 10 acres looks, right? So they care about the shape. And so, some of these properties are a lot longer than they are wider. And so that's something that's important to them too, outside of location, rooftops, is what is the configuration of the acreage.
Okay, thank you.
The reason I asked that question, because I understand where Councilmember Swap is coming from, but I also think that we're kind of running out of space to add a grocery store to the city in an area that would make sense. I'm not opposed to this, to keeping this in the general plan, or, yeah, for that reason.
Yeah, and I would say one thing, when you look at general land use planning, they kind of recommend that every community to at least have access to basic services, really recommend that everywhere has a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a banking institution. So residents nearby have access to their day-to-day needs. And grocery stores, in our current context, really provide most of those. Most of them have pharmacies. They often draw banking services near them. And, banking services, I've seen it argued, are not as needed anymore because so many people are just doing it online. But still, like a lot of time, business loans and stuff they'll go through, they won't do those online anymore. And so that's one reason I personally feel like identifying a central area in town where those basic retail services can be provided becomes really important, because I think the council and residents raise a good point that you didn't necessarily move to this area so you'd live right next to a Smith's per se. However, that being said, not everybody has the option of where they live, and providing those services in town I think also provides financial and social benefits to the city as well.
And just to, I agree with Nina that is the biggest question I get from people who call me or ask me questions is, when are we going to get a grocery store? And they are not talking about Walmart. So I agree that we can leave it open and see what happens in the future.
Couple questions, Stephen.
Yeah.
And I really just don't know. That's why I'm asking these questions. What is the draw for the city to put in a second grocery store after, we haven't even got the first, super Walmart in with the pharmacy and the bakery yet, right? What is the draw other than sales tax?
Correct, though.
There's a certain amount of households that, like in planning, you say for every 10,000 households, we should have another grocery store. Like, what is the planning? Like, why do you look at it that way? And walk me through that.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if there's an exact formula. Rob would probably be able to answer that a little bit better. But the idea behind that, from at least a planning perspective, there's an equity standpoint to ensure that basic services are available to all residents. And so if you may move to West Haven, you may live in a community, but as you age, you may lose your ability or to drive far away, drive across the county to get to a grocery store. And so providing one that's kind of centrally located that the community can directly benefit from, or have easier access to, overall can provide a benefit to that community. And so one of the reasons why we've kind of looked at this area per se is partly due to the acreage, but also because there's no other grocery store. Even when Walmart comes online or opens, there's still, in this area, there's still not that type of service. You're still driving into Walmart, and you're not directly adjacent or within a closer distance. So that's one of the reasons why we potentially look at this area. Also, I believe, as the city grows and as the county grows around us, that the demand for grocery and other neighborhood type commercial will increase in this area.
I'd just like to add to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You're fine.
I grew up in Plain City, and when Kent's was going in Plain City, there was the biggest outcry, and it was huge and loud. But Kent's has really supported the community. It's like a community center, and I see what they do for Plain City, and I see how the people support Kent's, and I think that it almost becomes kind of their personality in a way that Walmart will never be able to do. So I think that the personality of the store, you're going, you're friendly. I've just seen what they did for Plain City, and I think it's a real value asset for our community.
So thank you for that. I was just going to add too that from like a grocer perspective, how they look at it is they have these big heat maps where they see, hey, these are where people are coming from to shop in our stores. And so based off of that, Kroger or Smith's is an example. They said, hey, this Western, Weber, Hooper, West Haven, this is an area that we don't have a lot of active sales in. And so they don't necessarily care that there's going to be a Walmart for them. I know, like, if I come home and I've shopped at Winco or somewhere else, my wife's like, hey, well, how come this isn't a Smith's bag, right? Like, she's devoted to Smith's. And so you'll have certain people that like to shop at certain grocery stores. And that, so from that perspective, a lot of it is just driven off of looking at their existing footprints, their existing stores, and looking and identifying and circling areas of, hey, this is an area that's prime for another one of our locations. So that's from, at least from their perspective, of why even if Walmart comes in, you'll still have a Smith's or a Kent's or a Sprouts or something that's looking to locate in this area.
And I think kind of with that, Walmart is generally is a more regional service, while a lot of those grocery stores have a more local focus.
I'm going to continue my question just a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's wrong that look at a Sprouts or something small like a Kent's or a Weininger's, whatever it might be. That's not wrong for the city. But again, in the planning, what do we look at as far as what's too far outside of the city to travel to a grocery store? I mean, we have several right on our border. We have Winco on 12th Street. We have Walmart on 21st. We have Kent's. We have Weininger's, right? All right within reach. And we're getting a super Walmart. Like, what's the push for the city for another grocery store? I understand we want sales tax revenue. That's important, but why does that need to be another grocery store?
Well, can I just make one statement regarding that question? Kent's and Weinigers and Winco are not in our city.
No, I understand that, but they're all within short distance of the
Sure,
city.
they're within short distance to some parts of our city.
I mean, this question's directed to you, not at me, but all of our resident surveys have come back with, that's like the number one thing residents want in the city.
And we're putting a huge one in up the street.
It's not the one they want, though, I can tell you that.
No,
I
there's a lot of people
don't
who
think
say
that-
we're great, but
I think a lot of people see Walmart different than a grocery store. Like, probably the closest grocery store to my house is Winco or Walmart. I don't shop at Walmart for groceries. And I think a lot of people don't see Walmart that way. When they talk about a grocery store, they want a Smith's or a Kent's or a Sprouts, an actual grocery store.
and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Harmon's is phenomenal for groceries, for sure, especially produce.
Yeah.
Well,
and
and I
so-
think it's almost too much for some, and I will say elderly people, to go to Walmart. I mean, I would rather do anything besides go to Walmart to shop, because I think that's why they don't consider it a neighborhood store, is because it's like a safari to go there. And so I am in favor of a more neighborhood store.
I found it's easier to drive on the left side of the lanes inside those big stores. I don't know if you've tried that yet.
I try to avoid at all costs, but I'm not driving on any lanes at all right now.
Yeah. So, and maybe to kind of, we'll jump a little bit into planning theory to try to answer this question. And just kind of start with, normally urban planning is normally described more as an art than a science, that each location is so different and the needs are so different that, generally speaking, there's a reason why, like, the American Planning Association doesn't put out like like engineering puts out a book of standards for how to design a roadway, how to lay your sewer line, that type of stuff. Planning doesn't really do that. What they generally want to do is they try to train planners how to look at a situation and then make good judgment calls for how a planning decision should be made. And a lot of that is relying on community, like the professional planning really is very supportive of public processes, to have citizens, citizen planners, essentially planning commissions, council members, make those important decisions, because they feel like those are the members of the community who, the members of the community can make the best decisions for their community, essentially what it comes down to. And so, and I'm a big supporter of that, a believer of that as, you know, as a professional planner. But when it comes to, you know, some more concrete or maybe some, you know, guidelines and there's a bunch out there. But a lot of times when you're looking at these vital services, they want to ensure that most residents have relatively easy access. So we're talking about 10 to 15 minute access to a lot of these type of retailers. You know, if you really look at more urban areas, what they're really prescribing in that time is to try to create vital services within a 10 or 15 minute walk or drive or public access. So you have a bus or train that access that point. We in West Haven, where we're so suburban and spread out, I don't think that goal would be feasible, or I think residents would also probably not supportive of, you know, a grocery store every 10 minutes in walking. And I don't think the economy would do that. And so when we were looking at this from the economic plan, we looked at, you know, this is kind of a central location that currently does not have a lot of commercial services that are provided to it. And you're correct, we're building a Walmart that is another 5 minutes down the road, or 10, depending on traffic or lights. And then also as you go into Ogden or Roy, there's also some of these other locations. But within this specific area of West Haven, this kind of central location, there's currently not a lot of commercial development. There's some industrial down the street, and, you know, like a Maverick and Tractor Supply down a block. Actually, I think it is on the street, but but that was kind of the reason why we looked at this area. Centrally within the city, we anticipate that there will be demand as, you know, the 2550 becomes more busy and as development happens around it. And it also seems centrally located, so it provide a service to more of our residents than maybe what Walmart does that's on the edge of town.
Okay. Do you have anything else for us regarding the strategic plan?
No, just if there's any other questions. I also want to thank the residents who participated and the Planning Commission. I feel like they did a lot of work on this and to help provide some of the guidance to have the document that's here in front of you today. So I just wanted to thank them as well.
Thanks, Stephen. Yep.
Okay. Is there any more comment from council on item 10?
I think this is a great document. I'm glad we have it and we're pushing it forward. This is something the cities needed for a long time. So this is a good thing. And it is just strategy. It is just goals, right? It's not what we're going to actually do. So I'm glad we're getting through this.
Yeah, I think it's a good direction and good to have, you know, ideas of the future planning, right? And like Councilmember Swap mentioned, it's not anything that we have to do if we decide it's not appropriate. I would say also to my earlier comment, and the reason I think I feel like, because I understand what your concerns are, Councilmember Swap as well. We already have commercial on 4,000, so why not put it there? But when I think about like Riverdale Road, I try to avoid that at all costs, you know, because there's just so much piled in there. And that's part of, you know, what I'm thinking. If we just pile everything on 4,000 South, then it becomes a Riverdale Road and it becomes an area that people actually try to avoid versus, you know, maybe spreading it out and having a few of these areas that kind of lessen the impact on and spread it out amongst the city instead of having it all in one area. And so that's kind of where I just wanted to clarify my thoughts there a little bit.
No, I understand your point of view. Thank you for sharing.
You know,
So-
I really like this too. I think this is like the second or the third time since I've been on the council that we've looked at an economic plan, and I like that this has been very well done. It has goals, it has targets. It's something that we can look at and say, okay, here it is, rather than I've always been a little bit confused about other ones that we've done and what are we really trying to do. So thank you for doing such a thorough job.
Okay.
I think that I understand the point here on 2550. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I don't think a town center belongs here, which I already have brought up. And as we review the general plan, there will be more discussion here. I think that maybe commercial stays on corners, but it doesn't trickle out to the other parts of the roads. And I don't think anybody would ever avoid 4,000. That's the travel lane. Like they're just going to drive there all the time. So
Right, and to that point, yeah, you have to use Riverdale Road too, right? But I just don't want it to become
They got the bridge back in. You can go the back way now.
that.
that's true.
Yeah. Been missing that.
So it is well done. I don't agree with everything here, but it is a good toolbox. It really is. So appreciate all of the work that you've done here.
Okay, I'll looking for a motion here.
Sorry, I keep getting my unmute and my mute button mixed up. I will go ahead and make a motion to approve Resolution 28-2026 Economic Development Strategic Plan from Stephen Nelson Community Development.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
Councilmember Call.
Aye.
And I am aye as well. Motion carries. Appreciate the discussion on that and the presentation. Thank you very much. We'll move to item 12, presentation and discussion. The mayor and city council's election continuation of any agenda item from the 5 o'clock work session. Are there any items that we need to discuss? If not, we'll move on to item 13. The council will consider a motion to enter into a closed meeting for the purpose of a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property to be held in accordance with the provisions of Utah Code 52-4-205. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to enter the closed session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
and I'm also an aye. We'll go ahead and move to